Have you ever looked at a classic console and just wondered, how does that actually work? Today, we are going to pull back the curtain and see what it really takes to build a legend, a PlayStation emulator right from scratch.
This whole thing really kicks off from a simple but I think really powerful idea. It's not just about playing old games. It's about the pure joy of understanding something complicated by building it yourself piece by piece. It's like finding out how the magic trick is really done.
Okay, I know exactly what you're thinking. Emulation? That sounds incredibly hard, like a mountain of super low-level code and weird, obscure hardware facts. And yeah, you're not wrong, but it's probably not as scary as you think.
And that's really the beauty of it. Running an emulator is honestly one of the best ways to learn all those cool, low-level computer science concepts. But you don't need a soldering iron or an oscilloscope. You get to play around with CPUs, memory, and graphics all from the comfort of your own keyboard.
So, where do we possibly start with a project this big? Well, you start with the heart of the machine, the central processing unit, the CPU. This is the brain of the whole operation.
Now, to understand the CPU, you really only need to get your head around one crucial part, the program counter. Seriously, that's it. Just think of it like a bookmark in a book. Its only job is to point to the exact line of code the CPU needs to read next.
And what does this all-powerful CPU actually do? Well, it's this incredibly simple, almost elegant little loop. It fetches an instruction, it moves its bookmark one step forward, it does what the instruction says, and then it just repeats millions of times every second. That's literally the heartbeat of the entire console.
And for the PlayStation, that story, that heartbeat, always begins at this exact address. This is the starting line. It's the first instruction of the console's BIOS, the built-in software that wakes everything up. So our emulator has to know to start right here. No exceptions.
Okay, so the CPU knows what to do next. But how does it know where anything is? I mean, how does it talk to the memory, or the graphics chip, or even the sound processor?
Here's where things get really interesting. The CPU, well, it's kind of simple-minded. It doesn't see a GPU or RAM. All it sees is one gigantic list of addresses. Think of it like a massive street with billions of numbered mailboxes. This whole idea is called memory-mapped I/O.
So if it's all just one big list of numbers, how does anything get to the right place? How does a request for, say, mailbox number 1 go to RAM, while a request for mailbox number 50-something million goes to the GPU? Well, that's the job of a little component called the interconnect. It's basically an old-school telephone switchboard operator listening to the address the CPU wants and plugging the wire into the right device.
And this is the map our little switchboard operator is working from. You can see exactly how different ranges of addresses are carved out for different parts of the system. You've got the 2 megs of main RAM right at the beginning, all the way down to the BIOS ROM, where our whole journey started. All right, so we've got a CPU that runs instructions and a map to find its way around. We should be good to go, right? Well, this is where we hit our first really fun problem, a kind of secret handshake you have to know to get things right. So let's just imagine the CPU is running along and it sees an instruction to jump to a new part of the code. We'll just call that location foo. Seems easy, right? The program counter just updates its bookmark to the new address for foo, and the program keeps going from there. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, it's not that simple. Welcome to one of those fantastic little quirks of old hardware that makes this whole thing so much fun and so tricky.
Okay, here's the secret. The MIPS CPU inside the PlayStation is pipelined. Think of it like an assembly line. It's already grabbing the next instruction while it's still working on the current one. So by the time it sees that jump instruction, it's too late. It's already got the very next instruction in its hand. So instead of just tossing it out, it executes it before it makes the jump. This little oddity is called the branch delay slot.
And this shows it perfectly. You would totally expect that after the jump instruction, the code at foo runs immediately. But no. What really happens is that the instruction that's physically right after the jump gets to run first, and then the CPU finally jumps to foo. If your emulator doesn't get this one weird trick right, absolutely nothing will work.
So, after figuring out the CPU's main loop, building out the memory map, and navigating that super tricky branch delay slot, we are finally ready to see something. It's time to get a picture on the screen.
But wait, to get things on screen fast, we need to talk about one more thing: DMA, or direct memory access. Just think of it as a high-speed delivery service. Instead of the CPU slowly carrying data, one piece at a time, over to the GPU, the DMA can move huge blocks of graphics data all at once. It's absolutely crucial for getting any kind of decent performance.
And here is the truly brilliant thing about the PlayStation's graphics. The GPU itself, it's actually pretty basic. It can only draw flat 2D shapes. All of the heavy 3D math, the perspective, the rotations, that's all done by the main CPU. The CPU then sorts all those shapes from back to front and puts them in a special list. Then, the DMA blasts that perfectly ordered list of 2D drawing commands over to the GPU. It's an incredibly clever system.
So you implement the CPU, you build the memory map, you finally get that branch delay slot working, you wire up the DMA controller, and you make a basic GPU that can draw shapes. After all of that meticulous work, what is the very first thing you see? The boot logo. It's just a handful of really simple commands. Draw a black box, draw a shaded box, draw a couple of triangles, and suddenly, that iconic image appears on your screen. And let me tell you, that is the moment. That is when you know your emulator is truly alive.
So, are you feeling inspired yet? I know, building an emulator seems like this huge, monumental task. But really, like any big project, it just starts with a few simple, manageable steps. Let's break down how you can actually get started.
Here's your game plan. First, just define the CPU's state. All you need to start is the program counter. Second, build that simple fetch, increment, execute loop we talked about. And finally, load a PlayStation BIOS file into your emulated memory and just try to decode that very first instruction at that magic address. That's your hello world.
It all comes back to that initial idea, whether it's an emulator or a game engine or a tiny little operating system. The real reward isn't just having the thing at the end. It's the deep understanding you get along the way. It's the joy of discovery. So, what's the first wheel you'd love to reinvent?